Look at you going. Wow. Welcome to the WCAA 2017 Meet the Candidates Mayoral Forum, presented by WCAA 107.3 The Arts FM, Albany, New York, Grand Street Community Arts Incorporated, and the League of Women Voters. My name is Musa Zwana. I have fortunately somehow lucked up and become the station manager for WCAA. I am very proud of everything that we have been able to accomplish over the last 3 years. And this mayoral candidate forum is a culmination of a lot of effort, of a lot of volunteers, a lot of board members, and a lot of community support. I would like to introduce, it is my honor to introduce our moderator for the night, Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Plaat.
All right, so my name is Dan Plaat, and I've been a resident of Albany all my life. And I just want to say that these are unconventional times, and they call for unconventional policies. And everything that I mentioned tonight, in answers, anything I propose, they may sound unconventional, but know that they are all tested around the world and in this country by people just like us. All of us in this room, we did all of this together. Since college, I have been on a quest to find a new politics and a new path for my life and for my fellow travelers. It led me to activism. It led me to the Occupy movement, where I hosted forums like this one. And now it has led me to be on this side of the table. So the unconventional policies and the policies that we need to be putting forward, the vision that I'm going to articulate and to want to propagate here and represent, are based on the Green Party values of peace, social justice, economic justice, and grassroots democracy. These are principles. Principles guide us, and we need to be able to state what they are.
Thank you. Mr. Plaat, would you like me to repeat the question, or do you have it?
No, I got it.
Good.
So first I'll say a quick item about the budget, that we need to open it up to a full citizen audit. When enterprising individuals look into the budget, they find line items that are placeholders, they find inconsistencies, and they find things that may not make sense. Example, the police are looking to buy a new armored vehicle. On taxes, now it was mentioned in the last debate at the Times Union Hall, I take a firm stance on land value taxes. It is what I want to promote. Why? Because the institute that, the group that studies land value taxes and promotes it, they actually used Albany as a case study. They studied and they ran the numbers and they did the calculations, and for a majority of the city, taxes would go down because we are using a tax system from over 200 years ago. And it does not fit our current economy. Hell, our tax system, even if it was changed 50 years ago, wouldn't match our economy, because now we're a service economy. That is why the taxable land has gone down. Now, how land taxes work? Well, it pretty much means it divorces the taxation to the value of the land and not the property or the house sitting on it. That means it incentivizes people to use their land to the maximum, and this is, and thus is also incentive to actually fix up your home and increase its property value, because the land value is essentially the same. Because land value is based on the investment that all of us put into the land, and that includes the hard work of generations.
Thank you so much.
All right, first, as Brian mentioned, if a landlord, an absentee landlord, let's say, it can't be contacted and they are not upkeeping the property, they are fundamentally, they're practically purposely this ownerless. So we need to, as he said, seize them and whatnot, and use sweat equity programs. So what success looks like to me is a variety of ownership structures. That's co-op housing, that's land trusts and expanding the one we have and founding other ones. and so on. So it really is just a matter of expanding the options, legalizing as many as possible. The rezoning did a little bit of that as far as granny flats and other options and such, but it really is a matter of changing the relationship of ownership from one person, one property, to many people, many properties. The more people invested, the more people who have a stake in the block, the neighborhood, they own it. So there's so much animosity between landlords and tenants because there is a gulf of responsibility. And we need a form of collective responsibility, and that can only be done with collective ownership of some type. And that comes in many forms. It comes in co-ops, and it comes in land trusts, and things that the city can facilitate.
Mr. Plaat.
My version, my view of power is, or decision-making power, is that it should be proportional to how those, it should be in the hands of those who are affected by those decisions. Under that rubric, the people who should be in charge of our schools are the students, the teachers, and the parents. It is their schools, and if we empower them to run the school, they will do what is best for them. They will craft the programs that they want. They will keep the schools open longer. They will do what they want to do, what is best for them, especially if we give them the freedom to be flexible about what success is. Now, my standard is that by the end of high school, you should be a productive citizen, right? We try to replace school-to-prison pipeline with a school-to-job pipeline or a school-to-college pipeline. And that is, it's very strict, it's very, and it doesn't fit everybody. There needs to be variety and flexibility, both in curriculum, evaluations, based on performance and productivity, whatever form that may take, because everyone has different talents. And those policies can take shape if there's more empowerment. Because as you know, the actual studies and science shows that we need less homework, less standardized testing, less grading, and less comparing one student to each other, to another.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Plaat.
So when we're talking about infrastructure, we are talking about an economic floor. And at the moment, the economic floor in Albany is sleeping in the park and busking on Lark Street. So an important conversation to have is how do we actually fund all the stuff we actually want to build? We're currently using a lot of grants and one-time funding, but we need a permanent funding stream. And for that, we need to talk about public banking or municipal banking, the ability for us to create our own money, loan it to ourselves, to fund all the projects based on the value that is going to put in the city, which we absolutely will. Municipal banking may only work on the regional level, and so too our infrastructure, whether it be land use, water management. These are all things not constrained to our borders. They should be planned on a regional level. But amongst that, let me just talk briefly about some of the things that I would actually look to fund, you know, my priorities. And I'm just going to start with some B's. Buses, bikes, bathrooms, benches, yeah. So, and that means talking about direct community investment in things that make our city more livable. And I mentioned benches because it's the most simplest thing, but we have removed benches from our parks. There are many streets that have nowhere to sit, and a city or community that has nowhere to sit, where people cannot feel safe to sleep, is a society not worth living in.
Thank you.
So I was also at all those city council meetings. I was opposed to the trash fee, particularly because I am a tenant, and the word was that all the landlords said they were going to pass it on to their tenants, as is the case when you are a business owner. So I sat through also the explanation of the city's trash plan. It was very underwhelming. Besides the planning of the pay-as-you-throw, which is encouraging, yeah, the plan, their RFP right now, they're planning on a transfer station, which is paying a lot to make it someone else's problem. Now, I practice what I preach by separating my organics, and I compost, and I am that tenant that makes like one shopping bag of garbage every few weeks. And so we need to focus on building a composting facility, biodigesters, which is taking organics and making natural gas out of it. So it's basically doing what the dump does, but continuing that process with the organics only, which is much more efficient and whatnot. So that is the kind of planning, and also, of course, the targeting of upstream to reduce, all right? To say what we're going to do to reduce, and that means targeting upstream, up the chain of distribution to reduce the kinds of trash that we are taking in, and then, you know, doing what is, doing as much as possible to, you know, buying local and thus having control over the products we use and create, and thus we can think ecologically about it.
Thank you. Mr. Plaat.
So first to clarify that much of what, if you ask immigration activists what the Great Sanctuary Cities is about, part of it is not cooperating or not enforcing immigration law, but more not cooperating with federal immigration enforcement, which is ICE. And these are the real jackboots that come for people in the middle of the night. And so it's about keeping them out of our city and our region, as they have been. And they don't go after the rapists and the murderers. They're going after the fathers and the children and whatnot. That said, pivot towards human rights. No person is illegal, and that is my position on immigration. And I'm not afraid of Trump, I'm not afraid of fascism, because I'm a strong lefty, and I think we can defend, and we should do everything possible to defend ourselves and not be afraid of people who bluster a lot, but may not actually have the power to enforce anything that they talk about.
Thank you. The next question is on police accountability, and Mr. Plaat will be the first answerer.
Okay, so my positions on police accountability.
I have to ask the question first.
Oh. Doesn't matter what you say.
Sorry.
You got your answer ready no matter what, huh?
Oh, the topic is the topic.
All righty. Here we are. The Dante Ivy death is only one of the most recent and high-profile deaths of a person held in custody and part of a long line of controversial police actions with which many people, particularly in the African American, disabilities, and human rights communities, have felt that the officers involved were not justly handled. What will you do as mayor to give the community assurance that you will work to make the people of the city of Albany feel safe? And how does this include promoting more diversity in law enforcement and making an effort to make the local police forces more resemble the ethnic makeup of the community that it is serving?
Okay, so first, I stood with those communities as they reacted. And personally, I would fire the cops. Now, but more importantly, it shouldn't be up to me or the mayor. Police accountability is all of our job because they work for us. So it's a matter of having public, that's right. Just generally, citizen-controlled police. To have a board that makes police policy, not particularly the mayor's office, because the board can then be elected themselves, or they can be way more representative, to actually have all the stakeholders of the disabled, the marginalized, the underclass, the people who are the most policed, or the people, you know, and whatnot. So the other half of that is then the groups that we do have police accountability need teeth. They need teeth, they need the ability to investigate and go after cops that misbehave, but also upraise the practices that we want to see. What a lot of people talk about is they want to see police do a lot of the things that I think social workers do. So why don't we try shifting towards hiring more social workers and have them solve the social problems that crime really is. Because when it gets down to it, crime is caused, and violence is caused by the inequality of our society. Poverty is the crime. And so we need to empower people to take control of our police department and policing, and that is the way it must be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Plaat.
So about a year ago today, I was at the Green Party National Convention, which was hosted in Houston. In my short time there, I noticed they invested in about two things: highways and tourism. As mayor, we should all think about doing the opposite. My background is in architecture and urban design. I know the importance of softscape, things called bioswales, landscaping that retains water, permeable surfaces. When we repave certain sidewalks to make them as permeable as possible, that means water can go through it instead of runoff collecting where we don't want it to. And so we've got some of those things happening, but we need to accelerate all of them. My approach to disaster management is unconventional. There are these things called mutual aid networks. This is about solidarity instead of just simple charity. It would be hard work, but it's the hard work of peacemaking, community building, and building actual resilient communities. Not the pseudo communities where we're just nice and civil to each other, but the actual kind of community where, like I did, I went out into my neighborhood and dug people out during that snowstorm. So mutual aid networks is something that the city can help facilitate and build by doing consistent outreach, not just leaving it to professionals who will come as a service provider. I feel the city can do so much more as a facilitator to these kinds of solutions that are grassroots and that they're made of people taking responsibility individually and collectively.
Thank you so much. Mr. Plaat.
So first, want to thank WCAA and congratulate them on their going live. I put in my volunteer hours, and I can't wait to continue our relationship no matter what form it takes. I see myself as a mixture of science and art. As an architect, it's a bunch of different disciplines put together. And as an artist, I'm a designer, I draw, I play saxophone. Art is important to me. Science-based beliefs and policy are important to me. So much of this city, its residents are not represented. It was hinted at that only 12–15% of this city actually votes in the primaries. That's a lot of people disenfranchised, whether through lack of outreach or lack of actual access to choosing who the mayor is and who the council is. It goes to that we need a participatory government with participatory budgeting and processes and assemblies so that people have access. That is my vision for the city government. Access, equal access to common resources. We can think of the budget as a commons. We can think of the actual land and the vacant properties as a commons. We need to develop a commons economy to transition past the wreck of the system that we're in, that's rotten to its very foundations. Thus, is my sense that the mayor, my roles, my vision of the role of the mayor is to not be the micromanager of people's problems or the referee of fair play, but the facilitator of action and solidarity amongst our citizens, and to use common resources to make things happen.
Sorry, real quick, one last time, we want to thank everybody for coming out. Please hang out, finish the food in the back, we don't want to keep it. And for anybody not going home, we will be at V&R Restaurant around 8:30 just to hang out a little bit. Have a good night.